Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our current guest, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Emily Plajer on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Florida. Good God, it's just depressing enough already. But she's an IFBB pro champ. She's on here to share a health and fitness journey and, talk all things health and fitness with us. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Emily, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Well, since I do love to depress myself, what is the weather like in Florida today, Emily?
Let's see. It's a high 80 and sunny, so it's beautiful.
Yeah, well, the rich get richer, I guess. But hey, it is 50 degrees here, so there isn't too much to complain about. But I told you before, I'm not discussing weather because when I do publish that Dana Behrens podcast, which will be out sometime next week after I've done recorded this, you'll see that the weather gods did not like me because there was a snowstorm right after I taunted them. So I'm not even going to mention them here. So before we, accidentally anger them, Emily, why don't you give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to you becoming a bodybuilder and a pro and all that?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Ohio, born and raised there. Lived there for 21 years. Growing up, I was always involved in sports. I played softball when I was younger, played volleyball, track, so I was always competitive. My mom owned a gym in Ohio. When I was growing up, I was a junior, senior in high school. She started competing, got into that, and that's how I started in 2013.
Well, I've always found that fascinating that you're one of the first guests that I've had on that actually had a family member that compete too. There's only like a dozen of them out of like the 400 guests that I've had on. So what was that like for you seeing your mom, get into really good shape? And did you get like a ribbing from friends and stuff like that? Like, oh, your mom's jacked and stuff like that? Because for a lot of the guys that we have on, they hear that constantly.
Yeah, I did get a lot of comments from, like, especially being in high school and from the guys, and they would say my mom's a MILF.
Or like, yeah, they're like, I'm not gonna ask you out. I don't want to get hurt by her or something like that.
Yeah,
That's like, yeah, when he comes to pick you up for prom, I mean, that's a whole different conversation he's gonna be having with your mom then. But yeah, so that is actually pretty funny. But yeah, that is awesome. So was there like a moment or was it just a collection of moments that you decided that you really wanted, get in shape and take things seriously?
so I graduated high school, was in college, really I got into that, I guess, freshman college life kinda stuff. So I missed that athletic, competitive side of me that I had growing up. I saw my mom do this. I saw how working out made her feel, how it made her happy, and then seeing her get on stage, and seeing that how she loved that, it made me want to jump into that.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I mean, what was her reaction when you told her that you want to become a bodybuilder? Because even though she's in the sport, I mean, that's not the normal thing I think that most parents would hear from their teenage daughter, really.
So back then, when I first started, I was 19 years old, and I do the bikini division, and it was totally different back in 2013. Girls would go on stage just in normal bikinis. The posing was different. It really, honestly, had a bad name back then. So my mom seemed, like I said, being 19, she really was not a fan of me being on stage in a bikini, in heels, in jewelry, posing the way they did. So she, in the beginning, was not for me doing it.
Well, yeah, and especially for the dads too. I always say this is the one sport where the dads kind of got to suck it up a little bit and be like, okay, I gotta
Yeah.
watch my daughter prance around in a bikini, just relax, calm down. So no, yeah, again, yeah, it's having that support though is so important because we've heard so many stories on this podcast of people that haven't had that support and it just really struggles with them. But yeah, it's just so great that at least you had that background in it. But when you were getting into bodybuilding, were there any reservations that you had about the sport, knowing that, I mean, your mom competed? Because even if you did know someone that competed, I mean, there's still so many myths that the general public has about the sport. Was it
hmm
was there anything that you were concerned about, or was it one of those things where you just want to dive right in?
There's definitely concerns of what people would think of me. I guess a lot of people say that bodybuilders are very selfish. So I guess that I didn't want to be called that because I'm the least selfish person ever. They always say that we don't eat. They always say we live in the gym. So those were always definitely things that were running through my mind back then.
Yeah, they say they don't eat, even though there's like thousands of them posted, like what I eat in a day things, and it's more than any of those people have ever eaten in like a week, basically in one day for them. That's another thing that I love to point out to people. It's like you're gonna eat even more when you're
Yeah,
getting in shape than you will when you're out of shape even. I mean, there's 300-pound people that eat less than the people that we have on that are, like half that weight and compete. So it's just,
very true.
yeah, I mean, if anyone is ever interested in the sport, that's the one thing that I think everyone should lead off with. Where it's like you're going to be able to eat more, and that's just a positive. But when you were getting started, I mean, if you're to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape. Whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercise they do. So many little things add up to that overall package that people end up seeing in the gym. What was that journey like for you? Because if you're to walk up to someone and say, "Hey, what'd you train for that body part? It looks amazing." What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you. It's just so much trial and error.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So my mom, since she was in that world back then, she was the one who did my training, did my diet. We obviously used sources like bodybuilding.com back then to see what would be best, what exercises were best for this body part. So, yeah,
So I love to talk genetics on this podcast as well. Do you think that you and your mom had similar genetics when it came to like body parts that grew fast and body parts that lagged behind?
definitely. My mom has very nice arms till this day. She's, I think 55, I'm not sure. Her arms, delts. So I'm very blessed and proud that I have her genetics.
What's one body part that you struggled with?
So I have long legs. So definitely adding muscle to my legs has been a struggle.
I'm 6'3", so I understand completely what
Oh
you're
my gosh.
saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, the moment, I mean, I had that long, lengthy pitcher body where I had the perfect pitcher's body where I was, I wasn't skin and bones. I had a little bit of meat on me, but yeah, just long and lengthy. So don't even, I've always made the joke, I could inject pure muscle into my thighs and they wouldn't gain an ounce. I mean, I could do 10,000 calf raises a day. God forbid, that is my number one pet peeve because you're either born with them or you're born without them. I don't care what anyone says. You see a guy or a gal walk in the gym with nice calves and you're like, they've never trained them a day in their life. That's just, it's kind of like if you ever seen Entourage Johnny Drama, where he's always obsessed with calves. I always just look at people and I was like, oh, if only, because yeah, but it is, yeah. It's just I love asking that question because so many people just think that, oh my god, if I work out just like that person, I'm gonna look just like him. And I was like, no, that's never going to happen because first of all, you don't know how they got to that look, and let's be honest, some people are those genetic freaks where I mean, they can eat. Like I have a friend of my dad's who he's like 65 years old. He can eat 10 Snickers bars a day and not gain an ounce of fat. And it's just like, dude, I hate you. I hope that God's playing a cruel joke on you and you wake up 400 pounds one day. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet. So, hopefully, one of these days. But I mean, on top of that too, just there's so many things that people don't understand. And one of the myths that I brought up too that I love to talk about is, so many women especially have that fear that if they walk in the gym and they, do one bicep curl, they're gonna put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And first off, like I've told her before, I'd spend my entire life savings to train with you. You would be the first trillionaire probably in the entire history of the world. It's just so not true. But did you ever have that fear when you're getting started? And even if you didn't have that fear, I mean, I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
So I didn't have that fear because I saw my mom training and she did not wasn't bulky or anything. But definitely that is still a thing people believe. And I mean, I don't know why they still believe it because you can see on Instagram all the girls that train hard and they are not walking around like women's bodybuilders. I mean, women's bodybuilders and bikini girls train totally different, are eating different foods, and there's different things that go into each to put on that the muscle that they need.
As someone who has had hundreds of both on the podcast, I can confirm what she's saying. Yes, they are very different when it comes. I mean, I had Andrea Shaw, the Miss Olympia, who is currently the Miss Olympia. She took up the whole damn screen. Where I was like, okay, we're gonna need to get a bigger camera because you're not even fitting in this screen. So, yeah, I've seen the difference. And I've had some bikini girls too, where it's like, is there even a person there? They just look like they could take up. It's like in the office when Michael jokes about Angela. She's like, oh, there's a P standing next to you. I couldn't recognize you. So yeah, it's the same thing. But no, yeah, it just shows. And that's the one thing that I think is so cool about bodybuilding is that it shows the extremes at various levels. It's like, yeah, the bikini girl's not going to be benching 400 pounds like some pro bodybuilder might be able to do. So it's a completely different thing. But I mean, on top of that too, one of the things that I think impact women so much more positively than men about this lifestyle is that confidence boost that working out gives you. We have heard hundreds of
Yeah.
stories on this podcast about how it makes that change. And I mean, especially for women, I think that that's that one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact every single aspect of your life. How personally has that confidence boost impacted you positively?
So I love the saying look good, feel good. So just I mean, honestly, going into the gym, working on my body, bettering my body every day is just a confidence boost in itself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, just to be able to work on it and just, realize that you can. But I mean, unfortunately with this sport, there's always going to be issues with with thinking about how you look. I can remember there were times in college where I'd ask my friends like, do I look nice today? And they're like, dude, you have like an 8 pack. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you doing? So have you ever struggled with that? And is there anything that you like to do to help, get your mind off of it? Because I think that's one of the double-edged swords with competing is like, yeah, you're going to look great, but also you're going to develop some things in your mind
Yeah, I mean, definitely getting close to a show, you have that feeling where you feel like you're not lean enough. Am I gonna be ready? But
as you
that's
can barely peel skin off from you, basically, as you can like barely, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So that's why I have a coach, and I have that second eye, that third eye that lets me know, like, yes, you're on track, you're gonna be ready, so knock it off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, on top of all that stuff too, though, too, one thing that I also love to discuss is nutrition because it's one thing that's not talked about as much as it should be. I mean, it is 80 to 90% of the changes that you're going to see. What were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you first started getting into bodybuilding? And obviously, how has it evolved as your career has gone on?
So back then, when I got into it, I followed I guess, the typical bodybuilder diet, the tilapia asparagus. I'm proud to say that I do not eat that currently, which I'm so glad to. Um, Definitely more variety, and I eat a lot of food. So
Oh my
yeah.
god, yeah, you're just constantly stuffing. Is there any time where like you've actually had trouble like eating, getting that last bit down? Because I've had some of those moments too, where it's like you feel so full and you're like, oh, but I got to finish this.
Definitely during the off season when the calories are higher and we're trying to put on muscle, so we need to push the food. I've almost puked trying to get the food down.
That's been similar to me too, especially with those damn shakes where you're just like, oh my god, I don't want to have anything. It's like I almost want an IV to just be hooked up so I can just
Yeah.
inject it pure in my bloodstream. But they haven't come up with that yet. But I'm waiting patiently for that to happen. But I love to talk about just going into a prep because so many people don't understand that. I mean, 95% of the general public wouldn't even be in the amount of shape that getting into a prep requires. But I mean, once you get into a prep, everything just becomes so scientific where you have to get your proper amount of cardio, you have to get your proper amount of sleep, you have to get all of your workouts in, you have to get your proper nutrition. Everything just becomes so down pat. What is that adjustment like for you when you turn that switch on during prep?
So I try to keep my off season and prep routine the same. So off season, I still wake up, do my fasted cardio, stuff like that. But it takes probably a good month for me to really get into the groove of prep and a routine that prep entails. So yeah, I mean, a month in, I'm ready to go. And when I'm deep into prep, I'm deep into prep. I do the same thing every day, eat the same thing every day. So
God, even saying fasted cardio almost makes me want to dry heave. I hate cardio is my trigger word. I mean, I hate it more than life itself,
I
but
won't say it again.
oh my god, it's just it's horrible. And but we'll discuss it a little bit later when I have a little bit more stomach in me where I can actually talk about it without cringing. But I mean, yeah, with this lifestyle, I mean, there's just so many things that you go through, but one thing that is not talked about, and I mean, it's one thing that fascinates me because I found it fascinating that it's not talked about as much as it should, is that for so many of these competitors, your posing is going to be the hardest thing for you. I mean, it's harder than your working out, it's harder than your nutrition for so many guests. And I compare it now to being a perfect driver where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your posing experience been like?
So I believe posing is like the cherry on top of the whatever, what's the saying? Cupcake, ice cream,
The
whatever.
shake,
What
whatever.
sounds good right
Anything
now,
anything that's making me drool right now, basically. That's what
right?
we mean. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, posing is extremely important, and definitely has evolved with the more practice I've done. Posing's been different since when I've started in 2013 to now. It's just honestly like every other thing you want to be good at, practicing every day. And yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's just like a lot of things, yeah, where practice does become perfect. But one thing that really, intrigues me about this is that, the body is not meant to be in that flexive state for that long a period of time. I mean, it's going to take a lot of practice where if you take someone from the general public on, they'd last probably about 5 seconds before they just tire themselves out. How long into your journey before you think you develop that, conditioning that's required for the sport? Because unfortunately, I mean, there might be times where you're on that stage for minutes at a time having to hold a
Yeah.
pose. And it's like, that's not something that a normal person would be able to do.
No, usually after like a show, the next day I wake up and I'm extremely sore, like more sore than I would be during a workout kind of thing. Um, so I mean, honestly, practicing it every day for like 30 minutes to an hour conditions your body and your, I guess, lower back to be comfortable in that position because the lower back is the part where I feel it the most. So, and then obviously stretching is important.
Yeah. Apps. And I mean, out of your poses too that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
I love the standard, just the front pose. I mean, and then least favorite is probably when we're in that back pose because that's the part where my back is hurting because you're arching and, all that stuff.
Well, one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with too is anything that has to do with the lats, because that's one thing where you're either born with it or you're born without it. Was that something that came easy for you, or was it something that you really had to work out? Because we've had people where it's taken them years to develop that.
Yeah, the spreading the lat
Yeah.
kinda. That was easy. Back in 2013, I always would do practice the figure poses with, like, that pose, so that came easy to me, actually.
She's one of the lucky ones then, I guess, because literally we've had people on here be like, "It took me 6 years before I was able to finally get it and stuff." And it's yeah, it's just it's. But I've always said if I ever competed, the back would be my favorite, just because that's the one where you can put your smile down. Most people do not understand that these competitors' jaw muscles are going to be the most sore thing after a show because you are smiling constantly and yeah. Excuse me. I see sometimes when I talk this much, my throat gets a little dry here, but no, yeah, it's that's definitely one of those things that people do not get is like, yeah, that jaw muscle, and it's different because I think the ladies have to smile a little bit more than the guys. The guys can get away with it a little bit more, but yeah, that's just one of those things about the sport that just isn't talked about, I think, as much as it should be. But what is that moment like for you when you get to walk up on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on? Because I mean, it just unlike when I was pitching where I got to go on the field for like an hour and a half, 30 to 40 times a year. You're on there maybe once or twice a year for maybe a couple minutes at most. What is that like for you when you finally get to show off all that hard work?
I love it. I'm a shy person in general and have definitely grown out of my shell as the years go by, but being on that stage just for that couple minutes is it's literally the most fun ever, and showing off that 16-week, that 12-week journey that you just completed that was extremely tough, and showing off that hard work and your family in the stands and your just the crowd cheering is it's an amazing moment.
Absolutely. And when you won your pro card, I always love to ask because for so many people, they don't understand that when you win your pro card, I mean, that's the affirmation of all these hard, long years and all of this training that you're a pro now. And for a lot of people, it's the highlight of their career. What was that moment like when they announced your name? You realize, oh my God, I'm a pro now.
It didn't seem real. I don't know, I did and then, like, holding that pro card in my hand and then going out to my family and they're all, like, hugging me and, like, it was a like, seeing this goal I'd had for so long since 2013 when I first started and finally reaching it, it was an amazing feeling. I've never felt anything so amazing before in my life.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I cannot compare it to any athletic achievement that I've had because it's everything that you do individually. And it's like, yeah, that is just so amazing. But now I got to ask, what is your go to post show meal? What is one thing that you have more than, or that you crave more than anything else?
Cookies, so all through prep, I crave cookies. That is I love chocolate, so yeah, cookies. I actually have cookies in my freezer right now that I'm waiting to eat after.
Why do you torture yourself like that? That's just that.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's not like I don't mind it when they're in
If it
there.
were me, I would just like stare at him. Like I'd open up the door and just stare at him for like an hour each night and just be like, "Oh God, I can't do it." But no, yeah, I'm a sugar cookie guy. Like I, for some reason, I'm one of those weird people where I don't like chocolate chips. But yeah, that's now
What?
you're now I just don't.
Oh
I'm
my
weird.
god.
Okay, if you ever did get to know me, you'd realize I'm one of the weirdest eaters of all time. Like I'm also a plain Jane when it comes to a lot of things. Like if you get me a hamburger, just give me the bun and give me the patty and give me some ketchup. That's about it.
Oh my
With
gosh.
pizza, just plain cheese. Nothing else, nothing fancy on it. My friends literally complain about this every time. They're like, you are so plain and so normal that like it angers them. Where they're just like, but hey, I always tell it this way: they're never gonna get my order wrong. It's
Yeah,
impossible
that's
to. I
true.
mean, it's if I get cheese on my hamburger, it's like first of all, I ask for that's a whole. I don't want to get into my scuffles that I've had with the Dairy Queens and the McDonald's and the Burger
Oh
Kings
my gosh.
around here, but yeah, it's got yeah. So that's at least a positive with that. So yeah, with my eating thing, yeah, it is definitely difficult. But another myth and stereotype that I love to bust, and I mean, most people just don't understand that look that you present on stage, that is not a sustainable look. You're not going to be able to look like that 365 days out of the year, unfortunately. And I mean, some people, I think, especially if they don't have coaches, try to maintain that for longer. And I mean, it really impacts their health, and it's a thing. It's going to shorten your career too. What was that like for you when you first realized that, oh my God, this look, no matter how hard I've worked on it, it's not going to be sustainable? And has it gotten easier for you to accept that as your career has gone on?
Yes, because I know that I have to gain that body weight to be able to gain muscle and to make improvements before the next time I step on stage. So I love being stage lean. I love having abs. I love having my veins out, but it's not healthy for me. If I want to do this forever, well, not forever, not when I'm 90, but for a good
Hey,
amount of
there's
time.
I can guarantee by the time we turn 90, there'll be people that will probably be bodybuilding that age just because who knows. But yeah, exactly. I
That's
know what
true.
you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, so I've definitely come to accept that I cannot be like that 365 days a year.
I was gonna say one of the most impressive guests I ever had. I had a 73-year-old woman who had the pull-up record. She did like 43 pull-ups or something like that. And I was like, okay, that's just not even like why, like what, like, but hey, I know, it's just it is absolutely incredible. So yeah, and again with this sport, the thing I love about it is that you can get into it at any age. We've had people that started in their 40s and 50s, and they're able to compete and do well in it. So yeah, it's just it really doesn't know any discrimination when it comes to that. But I mean, on top of all this, let's be honest, the coronavirus has been one thing that's impacted our lives more than we could have ever imagined. I mean, you being in Florida, where I am convinced that they didn't even think there was ever a disease there, the way that they handled it. Florida and Texas, I mean, lucky you. But what was
Yeah.
this like for you when the gym shut down and everything? Because I mean, that's your drugs basically. I mean, like if you don't, I mean, I was like these poor bodybuilders I've had on as soon as the gym shut down. But what has your experience been like during this whole pandemic?
It was tough, when the gym shut down. I did home workouts for probably a week, and then I did not like them. I was not a fan. Like, to be honest, I was not a fan. They were not the same. I fell into a deep hole. I was supposed to compete that May, pulled out, thought I wasn't gonna compete at all last year, and then finally snapped out of it and was like, "I'm gonna get this goal reached in 2020." So, it was not a good time during coronavirus. But during that time, the positive out of it was I focused on my real estate career and made some money during that time. So,
Is the real estate industry booming right now, like everyone says it is?
it's ridiculous down here. Houses do not stay on the market. They're selling for like 200 grand over cash. It is insane.
Yeah, I live close to a neighborhood where like the lowest house is like 1.1 million, but I don't live in that neighborhood. Everyone, don't tell me some like rich bitch or anything like that because I'm not upper middle class, but not I'm not like those people that have like their own sport courts and stuff in the backyard. But yeah, it's I've heard from people, my friends are in the realty business. It's like yeah, this is a gold mine right now. So yeah, anyone's thinking about getting the realty license. I mean, I highly especially in Florida too, where everyone's moving there and stuff like that. So there's always a market for it. So that is amazing that you were able to focus on that. But how did you deal with all this stuff mentally too? Because I mean, this is going to impact people's mental health for so much longer than people think that it's going to be. I mean, even when everything does open back up and we do return to a sense of normalcy, there are going to be people that are going to be impacted by this for such a longer period of time than people think.
I mean, yeah, it affected me mentally, but I guess I just focused more on, since I couldn't obtain that fitness goal, I focused more on my career real estate goals and put my mind towards that to kind of stay mentally positive, I guess. Positively mentally, whatever. So,
Yeah, which I mean is great because, like you said, you are a very shy person, and as you can tell just from talking to me for this half hour that we've been on, I am the extreme opposite of you. Where
yes.
I mean, so can you imagine what this pandemic was like for me, not being able to talk to friends? Like
Oh
literally,
my gosh,
if
what
it
did you
if
do?
it wasn't for this podcast, I would have literally exploded, and I would have it would have been very bad for me ever. So yeah, I was literally I still to this day at least I have about a dozen friends of mine that I call at least once a week just to be able to just like check up on them and stuff. But yeah, I mean, you're talking to a guy who last week I set my podcast record. I did 7 hour long podcasts in a day.
Oh my gosh.
And I still wasn't that tired afterwards. I was still like,
Oh
yeah,
my,
let's keep going. So literally, I'm a freak like that. Where I've worked before at like call centers. I've worked at jobs where you talk to people. Where yeah, literally, I've out tired every person that's come into my. I've had people that have gotten close to matching my level, but they've never been able to top it. Where yeah, I just have that intense energy and stuff. And as you can tell, yeah, it's very apparent. But hey, I found a platform that I can function off of it as
I
opposed
think that's awesome.
as
Yeah.
opposed to being that guy talks to himself on the street. People are like, "What is wrong with that guy?" It's like I gotta get my words out of the day, okay? I'm just that's my I got the extreme ADD where it's just like I gotta constantly be. But hey, it works for me. But on top of all this, when we talk about the mental effects of this sport, this is so much more of a mental journey than it is a physical journey, and people do not understand that because they'll notice you like if you've had old friends that are just like, "Oh wow, Emily, you've really changed. You look amazing." They won't realize the mental effects that have taken in place of you as well, and they're 100 times more important. And it's just more lasting. I mean, I've always said if you get through a prep, you can do anything just because of the mental journey that it takes. But what has this mental journey been like for you?
So I believe if your mindset's not right, then prep is not going to go well. You have to have your mind right to be able to have the other things fall into place. So I'm really big on making sure my mindset is intact to make sure everything else happens. So yeah, I really focus on how I'm feeling and all that kind of stuff to make sure I'm positive, and then I can just, I guess, do the other things throughout the day. And
Well, and let's be honest too. I mean, everyone has those days where they wake up and they don't want to do their
yeah.
workouts. They don't want to do, and I've had a couple people on here say that that's not true for them, and I don't question them because they're my guests. I'm trying to be polite, but deep down, I'm like, you're lying. Let's be honest. Everyone has those days, and obviously, it. you're going to have those days. How do you push through on those days? Because I think those are the days that differentiate the people who are just interested in health and fitness as opposed to people that like live health and fitness. And so many people I think would be, so much more in shape, and it would help them so much if like they were actually able to be able to like mentally, get over those humps. But how do you personally do that?
So yeah, I do have tons of those days where I get up, I don't feel like doing anything. I'm exhausted. But then how I get through them is I just remember that I've done this before. I have this goal that I want to reach. And usually on those days where I have no energy are the days that I make the most progress with my body. So I got to remember like these tough days are going to make me better on stage. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's easy to say that now, but when you're in those days, yeah, but those are some of the best
yeah,
feelings ever when you finally get done with that workout and you're like, "Oh my god,
yeah.
this is just I can't believe I got through this, but I really got through it." And for me, it's like once you just get started with a workout, it becomes so much easier to just do it. And it's just, that's the thing, just to get started. But we talked about this before, and I mean, cardio is my trigger word. I hate it more than life itself. Or I mean, when I say cardio, I mean like actual running. I could walk on a treadmill and, I'm totally fine with that. But now that's the weather is bright outside. I won't even use the word NICE because, I don't want to anger anyone. But, now that the weather is bright out, I can maybe go on bike rides, maybe, go on bike rides. We'll see. We'll see about that. And that's my form of cardio that I enjoy. But how do you deal with cardio? Because, I mean, unfortunately, when you do become a bodybuilder, you do kind of sign a deal with the devil where you have to do it.
So right now I do 45 minutes fasted Stairmaster in the morning, and then I just got added 45 minutes post Stairmaster after my workout. Um, During that time, I listen to podcasts. I watch YouTube videos of other fitness people. Um, so that's how I get through it. I know that cardio is important. Cardio is necessary for me to get stage lean, for me to do good on stage. So yeah, I mean, but there's some of those sessions where it sucks, and I literally feel like I'm gonna die. My legs are gonna fall off.
Oh, I just can't do fasted cardio. I need to carb up to the max if I ever do cardio because for me, I'll walk for like 80 minutes and get, like 7 miles. But yeah, I gotta be I've tried to do it without, stuff, and then I last like half an hour and I want to like faint basically. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this is done now. But yeah, cardio, it's just not a fun, and I always have to be entertained too. I need to have a movie or something playing. Otherwise, I can't do it. I just need to be distracted in that. But let's be honest, the hardest thing in this lifestyle is sleep because, if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to work out. And for anyone that disagrees with me on that, pull an all nighter tonight and then go and work out tomorrow and tell me how that goes. I tried that twice in college, and both times I lasted halfway through and I was like, screw this. And people's sleep schedule is different. I mean, I'm more of a night owl. Like I was telling her, I was editing podcast till 6 a.m. this morning, and I was like, oh shit, I got a podcast in, 6 hours. I should get to sleep. And then I set my alarm, and I accidentally forgot to turn it on because being the idiot that I am. But normally I'm in bed, around like 2 and 3, and I get up around like 10, 11 usually. But what does your sleep schedule look like? Because I mean, we've had people on this podcast where some function off of 4 hours and some, need 10 hours. It's a wide variety.
Yeah, so I'm in bed probably 11 at the latest and then up every morning at 6. So I get a good amount of sleep. It just depends. With drinking a lot of water, I have multiple bathroom breaks throughout the night.
That's the one thing about this lifestyle that I hate more than anything else. Yeah.
That is literally the worst. I literally want to keep a tally of the amount of times I use the restroom every day. And then it depends also if my dogs want to get up in the middle of the night and go potty. So
I was gonna say bodybuilders are not the ideal road trip people because you are gonna need to
no,
stop like 15 times
yeah,
during a
yeah.
journey. So you're just gonna be like, oh yeah. So have them be in a separate car then if you're ever doing a road trip. Just
Put a
make no you
diaper
you
on
no
me or something.
you drive and I'll meet you there. I'm not stopping it. Yeah, exactly. Like I've said it like in hospital rooms, if they could just attach that thing that they do where you can just like automatically go in a bag or something like that. That would make yeah, literally. I mean, and I had a friend who lucked out because he had a house where his bathroom was literally connected to his room. So that at least that was good for him. But like for me, I got to walk, down some stairs and stuff every time. It's like, oh my god. So I get enough of a leg workout basically every night then really. So, hey, there are some positive things that really, yeah, there are some positive things when it comes to this. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, Emily, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the bodybuilding lifestyle and everyone will go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
I guess the stereotypes that people perceive that it is that we're selfish, we don't eat anything. And I guess the part of it being unhealthy is the biggest thing. Yes, it can be, but there's different approaches that you can take that you can last long in this sport. So those are the honestly the biggest things that I get approached with from outsiders.
Well, I just think personally because people do see you at that super lean thing, and obviously that is not a healthy look when you get to that super lean down look, and then they just assume that like that's your goal to look like that all the time, and it's like no, it's not. And granted, there are one or two genetic freaks that might be able to maintain somewhat of a look like that year round, but that's just because they were just so blessed. But I think that's one of the things too. But yeah, obviously too with the eating thing, I love to have guests answer those questions on the podcast just to help prove to people it's like no, you're gonna need to eat a heck of a lot more than
Yeah,
you normally would. But yeah, and one of the training techniques that I love to talk about on this podcast, because I was familiar with it a little bit before I started, working out. And then when I started working out, I became more familiar with it. And then with talking to people about it on this podcast, it's one thing that I like to use a lot is time under tension. Do you like to use a lot of time under tension in your workouts?
I think so. So my coach literally does everything for me. I train with him every day, every session. Um, I think I've heard him say that word. I'm not. I shouldn't say that.
She's lucky. Okay. She's lucky that she has a coach that's
I
that
am. I'm
dedicated.
very
Yeah.
very grateful that I'm able to train with him in person every day because he's extremely knowledgeable. But I think we do a lot of time under tension.
I was just gonna say because I did a time on tension leg workout a couple of weeks ago, and I woke up the next morning. I took 3 steps from my bed, and I almost fell over because it is ridiculous. So yeah, I love to bring that up because so many people just aren't familiar with that, who aren't really familiar with weightlifting, and it's something that I think really impacts a lot of people as well. But when you do your training, do you always have like set days for like individual body groups, or do you like to mix things up? Because I know some people like they'll train arms on a Monday, and then the next week they'll train them on like a Wednesday or something. But what does your training split look like? Even though I know your coach does everything.
Yeah, no, I do know my training split. So I have two rest days. Monday I'll do a quad focus day. Tuesday back. Wednesday a glute hamstring day. Thursday's rest. Friday shoulders, and then Saturday I'll do like a leg conditioning day, which is like higher reps, supersets, stuff like that, and then Sunday's rest day. So
Well, at least she knows that, everyone. I was concerned if she would have said, "Oh no, my trainer tells me every morning when I get there, like what I'm gonna work out and stuff." So yeah, but another thing with working out is that people do not understand that there are different times when to work out. I mean, we have people that love to work out early in the morning. I'm one of those people where it's late afternoon for me or nights. Do you prefer one time or the other, or is it just whenever you can get it in?
um I like 10 is usually the sweet spot I like because I get up, go do my cardio at 6, come back, and I can get in 2 meals before that. So that's what I by 10 o'clock.
I found with bodybuilders, a lot of them, yeah, are more of the morning variety, which is nice. I mean, I'm, like since I'm getting up, at around the time that you're getting ready to go to the gym, it's a tad bit different for me. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to just be at in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved if we were to talk to a year from today?
Um, Definitely I would love to win more pro shows. I don't know if it'll happen in a year, but I'd love to be Miss Olympia one day. Um, just to grow, I guess, grow my social media as well and put my message out there, what I love doing, and grow my posing clientele as well.
Absolutely. Well, since you do posing, and I love to talk posing, what is one thing that you think people struggle with most when it comes to their posing, or the people that you've at least talked with and trained with?
Having the confidence, that's the biggest thing. If you don't have that, you could literally be able to do the poses, but if you don't have that confidence and show that through the pose, it's so yeah.
Especially with bikini, where you have to have your own flair and sass, basically, where you're either
Yeah.
born with it or you're born without it, or because that's one thing that really I don't think can be taught. But yeah, you got to really be in. And I have seen some of those posing routines too, where that person just like just dead really while they're doing it, and you're like, okay, it's like yeah, but yeah, it's a huge mental thing. Like the overall theme of this podcast. I mean, it's so much more of a mental sport than a physical sport when it comes to so many things with this life. And if someone were to walk up to you, and I'm sure this has probably happened before, and said, like, hey, I'm interested in, getting in shape and maybe becoming a bodybuilder, what's one general piece of advice that you like to give them in order for just to help them get started? Because I find with so many people, getting started is the hardest part.
It is. I always recommend, well, I always let people know that this isn't easy. It, like you said, it's a mental sport. You're going to be tested mentally. And then I always recommend someone to go to a show, see what it's about, or talk to someone who has competed. Like, my DMs are always open. I love when people reach out to me and ask me what I love about this sport, how the experience has been for me. So those are definitely things that I would say to someone.
So is your mom done competing now?
She is. She stopped back in 2014. She's a nurse
Oh
now.
yeah,
So
yeah.
she still works out, but she loves watching me now. live out this dream.
Which that yeah, that just honestly just must be so incredible and amazing. Is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Um, I guess my biggest support is my fans, my family. My nana has been to every show since 2013, as well as my mom and sister. Definitely my boyfriend, my coach, my sponsor, Evolution Nutrition. So they have all been there for me, and I couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, that's a big part of this lifestyle is, having people that do stuff for you and stuff. And it just,
Yeah.
all that, I mean, all the micro things that go on in this, when it comes to meal prep or everything that happens. I mean, yeah, just to have that support is just so amazing. And yeah, again, everyone go and check her out. I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below. And everyone, buyer beware. You will be inspired to, get off that couch and stop eating those Twinkies and go to the gym. But again, Emily, we cannot thank you enough for coming on. And again, I really appreciate having you on and, sharing your journey. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you for having me, Ryan. This was fun.
Well, absolutely, and well, I'll have you back on a year from now, and we'll see where you're at, and hopefully,
Yeah.
the weather will be fine here too, and just like it is there. So again, I'm gonna shut this off before I jinx anything and say something that I'll regret about weather. But again, Emily, thank you so much for coming on, and everyone, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.